Good morning. Good morning. I'm Dr. Petro. Welcome to the Science of Mind class. I am happy to be here with you this morning. You can see I'm a two-fisted drinker this morning. We unexpectedly have our lovely granddaughter with us this weekend, and oh man, there was a lot of awakeness last night. So I'm having my 2 cups of coffee. I hope you have your cup of coffee and you're ready to go as we dive into this conclusion, the summary of part 2, spiritual mind healing. So we ended last week with the idea that there's a collective unconscious, a collective field of belief systems and ideas about how life is, which we all inherit and we take up by osmosis, basically, from our family and our culture. And this is why people can get ill, even though they've never in their life thought, well, I think I'll go get cancer, or I think I'll go get COVID. They've never affirmed it. They've never even possibly worried about it. But as we talked about last week, that's the generic creative process, which, as Thomas Troward says, is only concerned about the survival of the species, not about any particular one individual. And that's where we get statistics. So many people are going to die of a heart attack. So many people are going to die on the road. So many people are going to, die of this, that, and the other thing. And that's where we get statistics, the generic out-picturing that the universe is only concerned that life as a whole moves forward, that species and environments as a whole move forward. It is really the act of self-awareness that begins to break out of the natural cycle of life into, wait, I can understand these laws and I can use them. Now I've raised myself above those laws, the law of averages, and I'm now using this spiritual law in a very deliberate and conscious manner. If we're happy with the way that our unconscious mind is demonstrating and manifesting, and we're good with how that is showing up, then we don't actually have to do work in those areas. But in those areas where the dominant subjective idea is playing out, and we don't want to have that experience, right? That's where we do this kind of spiritual work, whether it's around illness, or it's around, our family's always been poor, or women can't ever get ahead, or racial inequalities, right? All these things. We begin to raise ourselves out of the law of averages. So many people are going to get COVID. So many people are going to die of it, right? We raise ourselves out of that because we are deliberately using the spiritual laws. And of course, as we talked last week, every time that we raise ourselves out of the law of averages and say, no, there's no reason for inherited tendencies to be true. There's no reason for systemic racism to continue. There's no reason for people to get ill from these things, right? As we raise ourselves out of that, we're actually shifting the consciousness in the collective, in the shared subjective field that we are all basically swimming in, right? And that's the deliberate, diligent spiritual work. That's the work we're doing. And the belief is that as we do that work, we're pulling all of consciousness with us. Because you can't do the work alone, right? It's in one mind, one consciousness, one life. So anytime that I raise myself up, I'm raising up consciousness as a whole. Of course, the downside is also true. Anytime that I buy into fear, anytime I buy into it'll never be different, anytime I add my consciousness to, well, this is just the way it is, well, I'm adding that too, right? I'm simply continuing to reinforce the constant out-picturing of what's in, as we call it in science mind, race consciousness, right? That means human race, not any particular race, but human race, the general consciousness that we share. So I actually had this experience last night. In the middle of the night, Aria was awake, and so was I, and so was Karen. And I noticed that moment of like deep-seated fear. There's COVID, there's the climate change, there's the potential for this massive recession, whatever all that is, feeling like it's collapsing in on all sides, right? And in that moment of fear, that makes all of that real. Like that's inevitable, but it's not, because we are spiritual beings actually having this human experience. And so our spiritual work, and what I did last night, took me an hour before I could fall back to sleep again at that particular moment. What I did that last night, over and over and over again, deep and profound spiritual mind treatments, reminding myself of what was true, reminding myself that as I raise myself out of all of that, I'm contributing to all of us being raised out of all of that. And the whole point is to wake up, to awaken to the fact that we can use these spiritual laws for good, for the good in our own lives, and that actually is good for everyone. And of course, we can also specifically use it for the good for everyone. So I found myself sort of toggling back and forth to spiritual mind treatment for myself, spiritual mind treatment for the planet, spiritual mind treatment for myself, spiritual mind treatment for humanity, right? Back and forth, so that these two things actually get raised consciously together. And that's the whole point. There's nothing magic about spiritual mind treatment, and you don't have to do it in any area of your life that's working, or that you're happy with, or that feels great. Right? It's the tool you reach for when something needs to be either healed, created, or changed, right? We have this remarkable tool, and it's not the only tool. It's anything that allows us to move ourselves into that spiritual consciousness. So on the top of page 178, we find that in the science mind, we use the term prayer. Prayer is, in this sense, synonymous with spiritual mind treatment. Now, there are many kinds of prayer. I think it's been documented that there are 7 kinds of prayer presented in the Christian Bible. There's the prayer of affirmation, the prayer of praise, the prayer of blessing, the prayer of lamentation, the prayer of, there's 2 or 3 more, which at the moment I can't think of, right? But there's different, and you can see them. You can see them in the Psalms. You can see them in other places where prayers are prayed. And there's the prayer of beseeching, please God, make it different. There's the prayer of bargaining. If you do this, I'll be good. Or if I'm good, will you promise to do this? And one more that I can't think of. And so spiritual mind treatment falls squarely in the affirmative prayer category. And it's primarily the only type of prayer that we find in the New Testament, in the Gospels, in the teachings of Jesus. The Lord's Prayer, the Our Father, is a beautiful rendition, example of a spiritual mind treatment. And it's an affirmative prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. Not, will you please give us this day? I beg of you, I'll be good. But these are all affirmative and powerful statements. And so we find in here that Ernest Holmes will use the term prayer, and he always means affirmative prayer, and he always means spiritual mind treatment. So I love this paragraph. We find that prayer is essential to happiness. Prayer is essential to happiness. For righteous prayer sets the law of the spirit of life in motion for our good. For prayer sets the law of the spirit of life in motion for our good. And that's why prayer is essential for happiness, because it moves us out of fear, doubt, a sense of separation, a feeling of aloneness, a feeling of not enoughness, a feeling of not good enough, right? Because the first two steps of our spiritual mind treatment, of our prayer, is a recognition that there is one life, and an identification or a unification that we're a part of that. And that whatever is happening, however the universe is creating, we too mirror that. We are in fact made in the image and likeness of the divine. It is not made in our image and likeness, right? That divine reality, or if you want to use the word God or spirit or the universe, it is not a superhuman. It's not. It's not a superhuman. It's not made in our image and likeness. We are made in its image and likeness. We partake of the nature of universal reality, of divine intelligence, of divine love. We partake of that nature. And so using our spiritual tools, using our affirmative prayer is essential to our happiness. For righteous prayer, right? Prayer which is right thinking, which brings us into right alignment, which sets the law of spirit of life in motion for our good, as opposed to just having the laws of life generically creating, right? Out of that statistics, out of that, well, not really caring about me or you as an individual, but just making sure that the species as a whole survives. Then it goes on to say this: prayer is essential to the conscious well-being of the soul. Now, I have to tell you that this is probably more important to me about spiritual mind treatment than it is about the fact that spiritual mind treatment creates results and demonstrates in our lives. I have been meditating for 40 years, and I've been doing spiritual mind treatment for 40 years, and I will tell you that the well-being of my soul has been more deeply affected and more deeply fulfilled doing spiritual mind treatment. Meditation has been hugely important, and a huge piece of that, learning how to control my mind, learning how to sit in the stillness, learning how to not get caught on things that are going on in my consciousness or in my emotion, learning that I'm not any of those things, that I actually am the I that I am, right? I learned all of that in meditation, but it is truly in spiritual mind treatment that I understood my identity, the well-being of my soul, that I truly understood my identity and the reality of life itself, and began to be able to express that. Prayer is essential to the conscious well-being of the soul, right? That we're consciously engaging and embracing the truth. Prayer has stimulated countless millions to higher thoughts and better lives, right? When we do our spiritual mind treatment, we are forced out of the swirl of whatever we might have gotten caught into a deeper realization of the spiritual truth. Prayer is its own answer. Why? Because we're using the law of cause and effect, and the effect pre-exists in the cause. Before our prayer is framed in words, the possibility of its answer already exists, right? Just like the oak tree exists already in the acorn, the answer to the prayer already exists in the prayer itself. That's what it means, the law of cause and effect. There may be some outpicturing in the space-time continuum that requires time, that requires the molecules of the universe to be rearranged, right? We may have to manifest and manipulate the quantum field to bring something forward, but the effect is already pre-existing in the cause. And the cause is the prayer, is the spiritual work that we do, the spiritual mind treatment. So I want to stop there and ask this question: what have you found is the value of spiritual mind treatment or a prayer practice in your own life? And the other side of that coin is, what keeps you from it, or what barriers have you found to having a prayer life, a practice of spiritual mind treatment on a regular basis? Because again, it's not, we're moving out of the idea that we do a spiritual mind treatment for a specific thing, but we're talking about a development of consciousness because we're doing spiritual mind treatment on a regular and consistent basis. It is for the well-being of our soul. It is essential to our happiness. Ultimately, it's creating a life, as opposed to, oh, I have to demonstrate this. Oh, no, that's not good. I better demonstrate that. Oh, I want to grow that. All good, all fine, but we want to raise the whole system up, the whole system of our own lives up, and the whole system of humanity up. And our prayer life, right? It's a kind of a religious, ancient term, prayer life, meaning our regular spiritual practice, really engages in that. So let me stop there. I know Ryan has chatted out some of those questions as well. And so Ryan Brown, we'll turn to you and ask you for any comments or thoughts that are going on out there.
Yeah, thanks, Petra. And I just want to remind all those who are watching us today that you can put your answers inside of the chat box if you're here on Zoom, or in the comments if you're watching us on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
And so I've got one person who chatted here, and then I'm going to call up Anita.
Okay.
So Dr. Autumn says, well, first of all, she says, good morning. Spiritual mind treatment creates the attitude and perspective I want each day. And I thought that's pretty well sums up what I feel too.
Yes, it's beautiful, right? Because they say set your intention in the morning. And spiritual mind treatment is more than just, oh, I'm going to be happy today, right? Which is an affirmation, it's a great place to start, but it may not have depth and spiritual legs to it that carries us through the day. And so, yes, using spiritual mind treatment as a way to start the day, brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that.
All right, now I'm going to call up Anita. Anita, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, Anita.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
So you ask the question about, what does your prayer work or your spiritual mind treatment do for you? And, for me, because I spend so much time in steps 1 and 2, that just connects me so direct and so deeply that then when I move into that recognition step, it's all communication, right? That step 1 and 2 is where I dive deeply into the connection with the infinite itself. Mm-hmm. And then step 3, so it's kind of more of a meditative thing, right? In step 1 and 2. And then I go into step 3, and that's my communication back.
Yes.
To the infinite. So it becomes very rich because it empowers me to move through my day, to know beyond any shadow of doubt that I'm absolutely supported, and anything that I ask is already complete.
Beautiful. Yay. Thank you, Anita. Thank you. And I love the way that you talked about it being so rich. Right? And I think that's exactly true. And I think when we first learn our spiritual tools and we first learn spiritual mind treatment, we are about the third step of treatment, which is realization or declaration. I'm going to create this. I'm going to affirm this. I'm going to manifest that. I'm going to heal that. And it's great. It's a fine place to start. But as we continue to work with this, as Anita has said brilliantly, we find that the first 2 steps of treatment, recognition, recognizing that there is this infinite intelligence and infinite love that is moving as life itself, and the second step, identification or unification, that's true as us, that life is our life, right? I too have found over the years that I spend way more time in those first 2 steps of treatment really reminding myself and building that awareness where it is an embodied lived experience. So then in the third step of treatment, when I speak my word, we're speaking the word as the divine reality, as us, individualized as us. And it's so much more effortless than speaking that word, wondering, really, do I deserve it? Really, can I do this? Really, is God listening? Really, 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 right? Those first 2 steps of treatment build that ground, which is why we have the 5 steps of treatment. And if you're not familiar, right, the first step is recognition, recognizing that there is a power and a presence. The second is that I'm a part of that. And so is anybody that I'm doing spiritual mind treatment for. The third step is where we describe the end result as if it has already happened and how that infinite life is manifesting in this particular area or this particular way. The fourth step is the automatic response when we know that it's already done is gratitude, how grateful we are that we know how to use the law, that we can speak these words, and that the demonstration is assured. And finally, the fifth step is we have to let it go, because our job is not the how, our job is only the what. Our job is not the how. We have to now leave that to the universal law to bring it about. Beautiful. Thanks, Anita. All right, Ryan, I saw your hand.
Yeah, and I think that helps to answer some of the stuff that I'm seeing here on Facebook, because a lot of people are saying that the barrier for them is actually remembering the steps, like how the sequential parts of the steps go. So thank you so much for explaining it.
Well, and can I just stop you there for just a second, Ryan? So this is why it's so important. It is important to actually use the steps consciously, right? And if you need to, write them down. And literally, you can look at them as you're moving through them, because what you're doing is you're building an awareness. There's nothing magic about the steps, right? Nothing magic about them. Let's be really clear. They are what is required for a profound and deep shift in consciousness that lands in a recognition, in a deep embodied experience of truth. That over time is what, these are the things that are required. My experience is that it's like learning how to play the piano. At first you have to practice, how do you move your fingers? Then you have to practice which black keys go with which scale on the, whether it's, A flat or C or whatever scale, right? You have to learn and you have to practice those, and it's kind of awkward, it's a little weird, and you have to pay attention. But the more you practice, the more muscle memory you create, and pretty soon you can play without consciously paying attention to, oh, we're in the key of C. That means I have to use these sharps and flats, or probably in the key of C there aren't any sharps and flats. But if I'm in A flat, there's a sharp and a flat in there somewhere, right? And I no longer have to think about it because it has become a part of me. And so yes, when you first learn the form, it can be awkward, you can forget, you can feel like, well, why is somebody trying to tell me how to pray? Well, again, it's a structure that as we work with it over time, what happens is that structure becomes so inherent and so ingrained within us, that it becomes a natural movement in consciousness. And we engage effortlessly in it, right? And then we start improvising like a great jazz musician who can improvise and shift from key to key and do all of that stuff without having to remember those specific things, right? So don't let that get in your way. Write them down. Write down a statement about what each one of them is about. And if you need to, have it right there every morning when you do your spiritual mind treatment. I promise you what will happen is soon that will become second nature. And that's when our spiritual mind treatments really start to soar. Thanks for the comment. Ryan.
And Petra, I have a couple people asking this, so just really briefly before I call on these other folks, can you just list the steps out, just 1,
Yes.
2, 3, 4, 5?
Okay, step number 1. Recognition. What are we recognizing? We're recognizing that we live in a spiritually causal universe, that there is more going on than simply the physical human experience. We're recognizing some truths about that infinite divine reality about the intelligence and the love that is the cornerstone of it, and any particular quality or a spiritual principle that we want to bring forward. Recognition, number one. Number two, unification, also called identification. In this step, we are reveling in the reality that that life is our life. It is my life. It's the very same things that I can say that are true about the infinite reality is true about my life as well. The essential I that I am is the I that is the one as me. So I'm spending time unifying that in my consciousness, or recognize or identifying myself with the spiritual being that I am, as opposed to the human experience that I'm having. Super important. The third step is called realization or declaration. In the third step is where we begin to describe to ourselves what the end result looks like when I'm using the spiritual laws to bring forward the quality or experience that I see in the infinite that I now want to have manifest in my life in some specific form or fashion. So sometimes I'm declaring it. Because the infinite is abundant and I'm a part of that abundance. I declare that that abundance is mine now. I claim the spiritual truth that abundance is the truth of the universe and it is mine now. And I am claiming my abundance regardless of what's going on in the world, regardless of whether or not I right now have a job. I'm knowing that that perfect job is being attracted to me because the abundance of life is mine. And however that abundance is coming through with this perfect job, right? Do you see? I'm declaring it. Now, we also can move into the other reason it's called the realization step, right? Is because we're realizing, I don't have to maybe argue myself into it, but I'm simply realizing how that abundance is showing up in my life, or health, or inner peace. I can declare for inner peace because maybe I'm not feeling it as much as I'd like in the moment of the treatment, or I can simply revel in, well, if spirit is pure peace, if nothing can ruffle the infinite reality, nothing can ruffle me. So the third step is where we shape the outer experience, the end result in our mind's eye. We imagine it, we embody it. The fourth step, thanksgiving, gratitude. We're grateful for the demonstration. We're grateful that we understand spiritual laws and can use them. We're grateful for our ability to speak the word. We're grateful for the outcome. Deep sense of gratitude, because we know that gratitude means we already have the thing we've just done our spiritual mind treatment about. Super important. Super important. Right? We do the third step until we know we already have it, the end result. And then, of course, there's nothing to be but grateful. Oh my God, I'm so grateful that I am healthy, that I'm in a happy relationship, that I have my inner peace, whatever it is. And then the fifth step, release or acceptance. We have to let it go and let the universal laws and principles manifest it. Acceptance means that I accept it's already done. So I don't have to control it. I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to manipulate it. And I don't have to know how it is going to come about. I'm accepting that my end result is already done. The cause has been so deeply set that the effect pre-exists in the cause, so it's assured. And so acceptance, and another word for it is release. I release it, and I'm now getting out of the way of the universal laws. I'm not trying to manipulate anything. Sure, I may be part of the movement, right? I may have to do some things. I'm moving my feet, but that movement comes out of my understanding that the treatment is already manifested. It's already It's already done, as opposed to trying to figure it out. There you go, 5 steps of treatment in a nutshell.
Wow. I think everybody really appreciates that.
Yay. Okay, good, because I'm now moving to my second cup of coffee.
Oh, goodness.
So just hold your horses. Here we go.
And just so you guys at home know that I saw Dr. Peacher, she literally just poured coffee grinds into the first cup. It's super black, and then she's got nothing but caramel and creamer in the second
Not
cup.
true.
So
It's not
you're
true.
going to see
Lies,
a really
lies.
upbeat show today.
Slander, lies and slander.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring Connie into the room. Connie, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Thank you. Good
Hi,
morning,
Connie.
everybody. Good morning, Dr. Peacher. Why? What you said about learning to play the piano is parallel to learning English as a second language. Absolutely. I teach them the pronunciation issues. There's a lot of muscle memory involved because they bring over the muscle memory from their native language
Right.
and express it in English, and we can't understand them. And then practice.
Yes.
And repetition is the key. It really is, yeah. But what I wanted to share was one of my challenges is having conviction that I'm worthy of the materialization of this treatment. And one of the things that helps me so much is belonging to a Sangha group.
Yes.
I say Sangha prayers every morning. 99.9%, you know, late. If I can't do it in the morning, I do it later in the day.
Right.
But anyway, and when I say the Sangha prayers for my Sangha sisters, I have conviction.
Yes.
But what about me? Okay, so that helps me. It transfers over to, yes, me too.
Yes.
And it helps me to be stronger
Yes.
in having the conviction for them. So it's a beautiful thing, beautiful result. Yeah.
Connie, I'm so grateful that you shared that. Man, that is so true. That was true for me as well. I noticed that it was easier for me to see spiritual truth for someone else than it was for myself. And because, we always assume we're the great exception, right? Of course, this other person can be loved by the universe and is abundant and, all of that, whatever. But we tend to hold ourselves as the great exception, but not me, because of all this, as you said, I'm not worthy, all this crazy stuff, which is why those first 2 steps of treatment are so critical. But there's something really powerful about doing spiritual mind treatment for someone else who has asked for it, for doing spiritual mind treatment for someone else, because exactly as you said, Connie, if I can see how true this thing is for and about someone else, I can begin to say, well, surely that's true about me too. Surely I'm a part of this too. Surely I deserve to have my life work also. And it's very powerful. So we do have sanghas. Sanghas comes from the Buddhist tradition. The Buddha, which is the spiritual nature, rests in the Dharma, which is spiritual practice, which rests in the Sangha, which is a community of practice. And so at CSLDallas, we have small Sangha groups, 6 to 8 people, that get together on a monthly or weekly basis, and they do prayer work together. They do spiritual mind treatment with each other. We do it in the group itself when the group meets. It's not a gossip time. It's not a time to tell the whole story. It is the time to move from the story to spiritual practice. We do that spiritual practice, and then throughout the month or the week until the next meeting, as Connie shared, then we're doing that spiritual mind treatment for those people in our Sangha. It is a powerful practice. There's nothing better than to have a group of people, not only who I am praying for, but who I know is doing spiritual work for me. So if you want to be a part of a Sangha, no matter where you are in the world, if you want to be a part of the Sangha, reach out, do an email to Rev Patty, that's Rev Patty with an I, Rev Patty at CSLDallas.org. And she'll work to get you into a Sangha. We're constantly bringing new Sanghas forward. I think there's going to be a Sangha sign up again here coming up pretty soon. But she'll work with you anytime to create a Sangha. Right now, of course, all our Sanghas are online. And so really, really, truthfully, it is effortless to put you in a Sangha no matter where you are. So thank you, Connie, for bringing that up. Super, super valuable.
Yeah, Dr. Peacher, I just want to mention me and Oscar started a Sangha. Since he's the music director here, we call it Sing a Sangha.
Sing a Sangha spiritual mind treatment.
That's right. We sing the entire conversation. It's quite lovely. Hit up Rev Patty at CSLDallas.org if you'd like to join. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring Deborah up. Deborah, do you want to go and unmute yourself?
Yes. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning,
and
Deborah.
Thank you, Dr. Peter. Good morning. It is always appropriate to talk about the 5 steps of spiritual mind treatment. I took foundations in the first part of 2019, and I was learning so very much. And after a while, it was like I knew it intelligently in my own mind what spiritual mind treatment was, but I'm like, one day I just stopped and said, this is not working for me. It's not working. Why isn't it working? You're not doing it. That's it. You're not doing it, Deborah. Yes. And so I'm confirmation of what you said a while ago about writing it down.
Yes.
That's what I did. I wrote it down. And with every step, I had writing beside it that said what it meant to me. And I had to do that for quite some time.
Beautiful.
Before I got used to the process.
Yes. Yes.
But you know what? I still like to write it down because I start writing things down and then I can just start going and it's beautiful. So yes, just do it any way you can, but follow that outline first. Write it down.
Yeah.
It works.
Beautiful.
It works.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you so much. You say a few really important things. 1, spiritual mind treatment is not going to work unless you do spiritual mind treatment. You can know it all you want, but if you don't start doing it, it's not going to do anything, right? 2, we're all different, right? We all learn differently. We all experience life a little bit differently. And so we have to find the ways that make it very present for us. And I don't know about you, but until I really developed my meditation practice and really developed control of my mind, I could be in a spiritual mind treatment and the next thing I know, I've forgotten the treatment and I'm over here thinking about what I have to do tomorrow or about something that happened last week. And I'm like, wait, I was doing a spiritual mind treatment. What happened? And so there are so many ways in which we can make it more real to us, more deliberately on point, and keep ourselves focused on it. As Deborah said, if you're a journaler, if you like to journal, writing the whole spiritual mind treatment out as you're going along is very powerful. It keeps you on point. You keep making it more real to yourself as you're writing it. And as she said, you can put the steps right there until you feel confident that you know them. I had a dear friend years and years and years ago. She did all of her spiritual mind treatments on the computer. She was a much better typist than I am. She would close her eyes and she would just start typing on the computer. And she would type out her spiritual mind treatments. And she said it kept her so focused and on point. Many people, when they start out with their spiritual mind treatments out loud. And despite Ryan's little joke about sing a sangha, there is an old understanding that a prayer sung is twice prayed. Why? Because you speak it and you hear it. For people who are very auditory and who can easily get lost in their own heads, speaking your spiritual mind treatment out loud is a powerful way of accessing that auditory part of us and, again, staying focused. Having a Sangha or a prayer partner. I have 3 prayer partners. I pray regularly and do spiritual mind treatment 3 times a week regularly with someone else. 3 different people once a week. And so in that out loud spiritual mind treatment for someone else, and then having them do a spiritual mind treatment for me, really keeps me on point, keeps me focused, keeps me engaged and in the process. You can find Spiritual Mind Treatments on our website. We have affirmative guided spiritual mind treatments on the website, CSLDallas.org. And what am I trying to say? We record and we text out a spiritual mind treatment once a week on our text app. And if you want to be a part of that, just let Ryan know. If you can be a part of our text app. And then once a week, you get a spiritual mind treatment. So listening to somebody do a spiritual mind treatment is another way to stay very focused and committed to the intention of the spiritual mind treatment. So we have, 10 or so on our website for different things. And as I said, right now we've been putting them out every week on a Thursday, a recorded spiritual mind treatment about something. And so all of these are different ways in which we can build this just do it spiritual mind treatment practice. And build the mental muscle and the muscle memory in our brains, in our consciousness, about this process of unfolding spiritual truth and engaging with it. There are many ways to unfold spiritual truth and to engage with it. There's all kinds of tools and techniques. Spiritual mind treatment is a powerful technology that gathers a bunch of different tools and techniques into one single form that is truly the most powerful form I've ever experienced. All right, Ryan, we're going to turn over to you.
Yes, Petra, and now that you bring it up, I would like to sing the next quote. Dr. Autumn says that spiritual mind treatment and writing it down helps her to keep track of the journey. Yeah. So I said I joined the sing-a-song. I didn't say I was good at singing the Sangha. But yeah, I think that having it written down gives us a way to really track our demonstration, doesn't it?
Yes, that's true too, right? It keeps you in track on your journey, absolutely, and we can begin to track our demonstrations. I suggest that you not only have a gratitude journal, but you have a manifestation journal as well. Because sometimes demonstrations will happen and you won't notice because you're so busy thinking about the next thing that you want to demonstrate, because we're often so busy thinking about what's not working in our life that we don't notice that actually we've demonstrated something. Especially some of those deeper, richer demonstrations that aren't just, okay, well, I need $1,000 because I want to go on a trip, or I need this, instant manifestation, but really our life creating spiritual mind treatments. I'm developing inner peace. My relationships are healthier. I remember doing spiritual mind treatment. I must have done it for 5 years. I am supported. I attract people who support me. I did that for a long time because I had such deep-seated beliefs that were the opposite of that. And and then all of a sudden, I remember waking up one day and going, oh, wow, look at that. Look at all the people who I actively feel support me. I can feel it. They're right there helping me accomplish what I need to accomplish. Oh my gosh. But if I hadn't stopped to see that, I would actually not have noticed, because I was already on to something else that I wanted to work on in my own life. So a manifestation journal where you can say, look, this has come about, is also really powerful. And it's great because, again, remember we talked about it a couple weeks ago. We are not fooling ourselves. A demonstration is documentable. In some form or fashion, you can point your finger at it. And even as much as we do something about inner peace that says, okay, I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and instead of being awake all night and being anxious the whole rest of the day, I wrestle my consciousness into a new place in an hour. I can point to that and say that. And I woke up this morning not afraid, because I had done that deep work in the middle of the night. And so our demonstrations, we must be able to document them. Otherwise, we just feel better because we've done a spiritual mind treatment, which is great. It's great to feel better. We've maybe pulled ourselves out of the hole, but without the actual demonstration, it has not yet manifested. Beautiful. Thank you. All right, Ryan.
I don't know why you keep coming back to me, Peter. I have nothing to tell you anymore.
No more comments? No more comments?
I'm just kidding. I always have comments for you, but I think we want to go a little bit further in the book here.
All right, here we go. We find that faith in God is a spiritual quality of the mind, and an understanding faith is based on immutable principle. Its action is higher than that of the intellect because it is born of intuition. All right, so I want to disabuse anybody of the notion that spiritual mind treatment is simply an intellectual exercise where we use a lot of words. Okay, so when we talk about when we use the word mind in the science of mind, when we use the word mind, we actually mean consciousness. And consciousness is an embodied experience. It is our mind plus our heart plus our energetic emotional body, right? Those three things constitute our consciousness as a whole. And so when we are doing this work and we find that faith in God is a spiritual quality of the mind, and an understanding faith is based on an immutable principle, this is not just an intellectual idea. Now, it may start out as an intellectual idea, or it may even start out as an unformed sense of oneness, or a knowing that I can't really give words or language to, right? But the work in our spiritual mind treatment is higher than just the intellectual words, but it is the intuition, which is the full knowing of something. So let's talk about that for a minute. So in our rational, enlightenment, scientific, revolutionized Western culture, we have come to believe that the only way that something is true, or the only way that we know it, is either A, we reason ourselves to it, logically reason ourselves to it, which is an intellectual exercise, or B, we can touch, taste, smell, feel, measure it. We can take it into the laboratory and we can measure it. Facts. So logical reasoning, the intellectual exercise of analysis, and 2, facts. This is the product of the Enlightenment all the way through the scientific revolution on into today. The problem is that is only one way of knowing something. Actually, it's 2 ways of knowing something. I can either know it because I've logicked my way to it, or I can know it because I can touch it, taste it, feel it, I can measure it, I can take it into the laboratory and say, this is the fact about it. But we have another way of knowing. The other way of knowing is intuition. Intuition is the way of knowing in a holistic moment of awareness where we embody and embrace the truth of something without having logicked our way to it, or without having facts to prove it. Intuition is not just the way spirit talks to us, okay? That's usually inspiration. Intuition is a way that we know something. But do you see, intuition means I know the wholeness of something in its entirety in an instant. So my mind, my heart, my energetic space, my body, everything comes together and goes, oh, I know this truth, right? And ultimately, that's the place we're coming to in our spiritual mind treatment, because we don't yet have the evidence of our senses of the demonstration. It actually hasn't demonstrated yet. But we so deeply know the fullness of it at every level of our being. That's the intuition. That's the awareness of the fullness of the reality of it, born of intuition. And so our faith in the work that we're doing, right, is the cornerstone of that process that brings that intuitive knowing, that full knowing. Yes, this, what I've just stated in my spiritual mind treatment, this is the truth. Nothing else am I going to consider. And that's our place of faith and conviction. So, the next paragraph, one should have faith in oneself, faith in our fellow human being, in the universe, and in God. Our mind must be steady in its conviction that our life is some part of God and that the Spirit is incarnated in us. So that's the process, right, as we talked about the first two steps of treatment. Why those first two steps of treatment are so important? Because it is building. Our mind must be steady in the conviction that our life is some part of God. And we use the term God not, again, to mean some superhuman out there, but it's like a little glyph, like, you know, like Prince has that little glyph, the artist formerly known as Prince, right? So I convert the word God into a little glyph that is basically a symbol for ultimate infinite reality that is the spiritual ground of all being from which everything comes, which is life itself, which is the infinite love and intelligence of the universe manifesting itself from a spiritual reality of oneness into the multiplicity of the physical space-time continuum. That's my definition of the word God. You might think about what your definition of the word God is. So we're not going to get hung up on the word God. I don't use it a lot. I think it has too much baggage around it, but it's certainly used in the book. So every time I see the word God, I know what that glyph means. And so our mind must be steady in conviction that our life is some part of this oneness and that this Spirit is incarnated in us. And so our spiritual mind treatment is not only demonstrating, but as we talked about before, it's actually building that conviction, building that faith, building that awareness that this is actually the truth. And so when I speak the word in a spiritual mind treatment, see, here's the other piece of it. When I speak the word in spiritual mind treatment, I'm no longer speaking as my human self, looking outside of myself going, oh, please, God. Or even, shall we say in metaphysics, well, I hope the law will manifest this for me. Or I'm going to see what the law is going to do for me. No, that is coming from the human side of it as if I'm talking to something outside of myself. But when my first two steps of treatment have built this faith and this conviction that we're some part of this and that Spirit is the life incarnating as us, when we come to that third step of spiritual mind treatment, do you see we are speaking as the creative force? We are speaking as that one life, individualized as us, with all of the rights and privileges of being a spiritual being, having a human experience. That's why that second step, I like the word identification more than I like the word unification, because I am identifying the truth of my being as a spiritual being who is now speaking the word as a spiritual being into my life, as opposed to a human being that is somehow hoping to manipulate a spiritual reality. All right, Ryan, I see your hand, so I'm coming back to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Petra. So I have a little bit of a question here for you. And so I understand we have intuition, and then we also have this thing called conviction. So what would be the difference in using that in my spiritual mind treatment, where I might be coming from a place of intuition to help guide me, or a place of conviction to help guide me? What would be the differences in using those?
Hey man, that's a great question. See, and this is why, people laugh at me. Science of Mind and New Thought is utterly aware of the power of words. We use our words in our spiritual mind treatment to shape reality, to give voice to what we know, and experience, right? Our words are not just an intellectual exercise. And so for me, words have flavor and texture, and I can literally taste and feel words. This may not be true for you, and it's really okay. Sometimes it's semantics. But for me, conviction is the powerful place of knowing that there are universal principles and that I can use them. That's the conviction, right? The conviction isn't necessarily about the end result. The conviction is that I'm using these spiritual laws and therefore the end result is assured. Intuition, for me, intuition works, it is showing up as the awareness of the fullness of the reality of the end result that I'm creating in my spiritual mind treatment, right? Because intuition requires no logic, it requires no rational evidence, and it requires no fact-based evidence. Why? Because it's causal. It's causal, so it isn't yet in form. It isn't yet an effect. It is causal. And it is our intuition that can grasp causal reality in its entirety, in its fullness. That I already am healthy, whole, and perfect, despite what my doctor says. That I am actually a spiritual being, despite the trauma or the limitations of my human existence. Do you see? The intuition is the full-orbed awareness of this truth without the need for reasoned, logical evidence or fact-based evidence. What comes out of that is the outpicturing, which then affirms the intuition, then demonstrates the intuition. So that's how I would differentiate those two things, right? I think sometimes we spend too much time thinking I have to have conviction about the end result. Not always sure I do. I have conviction in the use of the law, just as I have conviction in the use of the law of mathematics, right? If I'm going to do a problem of some sort, I'm utterly convinced that if I do the problem correctly, the law of mathematics is going to give me an answer. So our conviction is in the process that we ourselves are doing and in the use of the law, and that we are, as Connie said, worthy of it, that we are in fact spiritual beings, using these laws and principles to demonstrate and to raise not only ourselves above the law of averages, but everybody, all of creation, all of humanity above the law of averages. All right, so I really invite you to continue to go deeper into your prayer life, right? Your use of spiritual mind treatment on a regular basis, whether you think you need it or not. I mean, you could just do spiritual mind treatment every morning to know that spiritual mind treatment works, or that you're more grounded in spiritual truth, or that you feel the sense of the divine, or that you're happy, or right? You don't always have to have some crisis that you have to fix, or something that you have to manifest, right? But it is the practice of doing it that just deepens an awareness of in our consciousness that is so powerful. It is it is essential to happiness. It is essential to the conscious well-being of the soul. So I invite you into that. We're going to continue on with our summary of spiritual mind treatment, spiritual mind healing next week. I'm so happy to spend this time with you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for everybody who's been with us today. I'll look forward to seeing you in the gathering shortly, or we'll see you wherever we see you online, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Bye for now.